Your book that changed your life is Harry Potter. What effect is it having on an 11 or 12-year-old? Now, usually we would be making you a cocktail.
Listen, give me 3 months.
What do you think of the library?
I want to live here. I want to live in this room.
Definitely the Duchamp.
Then definitely the Duchamp section. Big fan. We moved to this country. We're super poor. I'm such an outcast at my school. My brothers didn't want to play with me, so I'd go off and make up my own adventures in this tree house that I made in the backyard.
We love talking about books that have changed people's lives, had such an impact that they are different after reading the book. Today we have a special guest, Anastasia Narinskiy. Okay, so then the big question is, how did the Harry Potter books change your life?
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
It looks just like a...
Cheers.
Cheers. Wow. This is
just for the record, the water is because you're expecting.
Right. This is water. I'm just kidding.
What do you think of the library?
I want to live here. I want to live in this room. I love all the statues. Love this Minotaur guy.
Beth, she's an English artist.
Oh, I thought the Minotaur's name was Beth, and I got very nervous.
No, the theme there, even before the library was built, we acquired that because this leadership experience that I do, we start off with a story about the Minotaur. Cool. And so it was kind of a staple. We had to have something, and
love that.
Her style, and he's reading a book. It's just so cool.
It's so cool.
How long have you been in LA?
15 years.
And where were you before that?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah, I grew up in Cleveland.
That's a big change.
Big change.
Were your parents first generation?
I'm first generation. And my parents, I guess. So we moved to Cleveland when I was 4.
So you were born in Russia?
Yeah. Born in St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Yeah. And then we moved to Cleveland when I was 4, as so many Russians do, apparently. And and then I came here 15 years ago.
So you were young enough not to really be affected because you were still learning and you're a kid having fun, or were you affected?
With
just the cultural difference?
I mean, I guess I was sort of shielded from it, but I mean, my parents are, foreigners. So I grew up in their house. So while I was going to school and I'm basically American at school, home is so Russian. So food and movies and TV. I didn't watch cartoons when I was a kid because I didn't know. So I watched a lot of Nick at Night as a kid. So Bewitched and I Love Lucy, which I don't think anyone else who's 9 years old is watching when they get home from school. So I guess I was somewhat affected.
How did your parents come here? What was the catalyst for that?
So we came here as refugees because it was so rough, the communist Russia at the time. It was 1992 when we ended up coming over. And my parents were just terrified. They were 30 and had 3 kids who were young. And a lot of people, what they were doing was sending their kids off to other countries to go to school, boarding schools. And my parents didn't want to do that. They didn't want to grow up without them. So they're we got to get out of here. So they started filing for refugee status in other countries. And we're Jewish. We're not necessarily very practicing, but, it's in our family. So they filed as Jewish refugees. And America, the Jewish community in Cleveland was we'll sponsor you. You can come here. And so we lived with a rabbi. They gave my parents jobs as, my mom sewed. So she was a tailor. So they gave her some job as at a tailor shop. And they gave my dad a job moving boxes in a warehouse at night. They put him through community college to learn English during the day. And they just like worked so hard.
Did you have siblings?
I have 2 older brothers.
Oh, so they kind of protect you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. That's kind of the perfect mix.
I certainly didn't notice any hardships. And I don't know if my brothers did either.
I heard that you're reading a book a week.
Yeah,
Just
approximately.
You're an overachiever?
Yeah, maybe. I really started reading like a lot a couple years ago. What book did I read? I read some book and I would go through phases in my life where I'll read something. I'm like, oh my God, I love reading. Why am I not reading more? And then I just like read all the time. I have a very bingey personality, like addictive personality. And then I just started reading a bunch. And then every year I would, finish the year off. I'm like, oh, I read 20 books this year. That's great. I think it started with, I'm going to read 12 books this year, 1 book a month. And then I surpassed it. I read like 14. And I was like, oh, 14, I could do more. So then the next year I'm like, I'll do 24 books this year. And I read more than 24 books. And so this year I was like, I'll do 52. And I think I'm at 39, but I'm almost done with this one book. So I'll be at 40 soon. And so I'll definitely hit it.
If you're trying to read 52 in a year, does it change how you select the books? Because you're not going to read Steve Jobs' autobiography.
But I will, because the book I'm reading right now is like 1,200 pages long.
Oh my goodness.
And I just finished another 1,200 page one. And
you can do that in a week?
No, but I am always listening to a book and reading a book. So the ones I listen to, I'll listen to a book in 2 days, so, and if it's really good, I'll listen to it in a day.
Your book that changed your life that we're here to talk about is Harry Potter. Now, is it Harry Potter, all of the series, or is there one particular one that was the catalyst?
You know what it is? It's the series in general. And it was such a hard pick to decide because I almost picked a different book entirely.
What was the one you almost picked?
I almost picked Valley of the Dolls by Suzanne Collins. It's like some book from the 60s.
That was made into a movie, right?
It was with Sharon Tate.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't do it justice. And look, the book is like, it's good. It's great. It's just someone gave it to me because they knew I wanted to move to LA to be an actor. And I just became obsessed with it. And I've read it so many times. For that reason, it changed my life. And then actually while I was sitting out there, I was like, you know what book really I should have picked is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, which is like a self-help book.
Who's she?
She's just she like wrote this book about.
You are a badass.
And there's a lot more to it, but it's like, you should probably stop like feeling sorry for yourself if like bad things have happened to you. There's a lot more to it than that.
So it's like empowering.
Yeah, it is. Because I had
just step into yourself and accept it for what it is kind of a thing?
Sort of. I had this really crazy spinal injury 7 years ago. And I just was like, I got so depressed afterwards for like a year. And I'm really not, I'm like a pretty happy person generally.
Resilient.
Yeah, pretty resilient, like optimistic.
Yeah, you give that energy.
Yeah, like for the most part. Obviously,
you're not
like,
a victim.
Yeah. And this like put me in a bad place, this like spinal injury. I had emergency spinal surgery. I had all this nerve damage and just like my life trajectory sort of changed. And then I had a friend email me after we hung out and was like, hey, you seem like you're in a bad place. And here's some stuff that really helped me. And this book really helped me. And finally one day I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book. And I read it and it like snapped me out of it.
Maybe you can come back and do that one.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, books can change your life many times. Like,
that's true.
You're not limited on I would have a dozen probably.
But as a reader in general, this book series changed my life.
So kind of put me in the place before the book entered your life. Like, how old were you? What was life like?
I must have been in middle school. There was a kid on my school bus who read it, and me and this other girl were like, nerd.
How old are you?
I must have been 11.
So is that like 8th grade, 7th grade?
6th or 7th? Yeah, 6th.
And you're in Cleveland.
Cleveland, outside of Cleveland, suburbs of Cleveland.
Freezing cold.
Freezing cold. freezing cold. Truly, we lived, I mean, it's like 40 minutes outside of
A
Cleveland.
cold that people here don't understand.
A cold that people here would never
hurt your
understand.
feelings cold.
Truly, they don't plow the streets in my hometown. It's a horrifying place, but beautiful. And then I saw the first movie after the movie came out.
So they were making fun of the kid.
We were making fun of this kid, not to his face. Is that worse? Not like behind. We were
Kids
just,
are
we were
mean.
being kids and we
Kids
were
are
like,
mean. It
ugh,
is
what a
what it is.
nerd. He's like reading Harry Potter. And then the movie comes out and we're like, we should see it as a joke. And then we go to see it and I was like, this is the coolest story ever. I was like, I got to read all these books. And I think 3 of them had already been out.
So do you start at the beginning?
So I started at the beginning.
The movie you see, is it the first one?
Is the first
How
one.
many movies are there?
There are 8 movies now
Oh my goodness.
because the last book got turned into 2 movies.
Full disclosure, I've never seen or read.
You're in for such a treat. My husband, when we started dating, also had never read or seen them. And I made him. I was like, you're going to read all the books and then we're going to watch the movie after you're done with the book. And it's going to be great. And he loved it.
Is he a big reader?
Big reader. Yeah. He's probably one of the reasons I read as much as I do now.
Since your husband's a reader, what kind of library situation do we have at home?
Listen,
Is it stacks?
if
Is
it was up to him,
organized?
we would be hoarders. But we have a toddler, so I won't allow it. And so one day we have dreams of having a house with a library. I want a library in my house. I want a big, comfortable chair, and I want just stacks of books. But right now we have like basically 2 bookshelves.
So you introduce him to him, and then he reads the first one and
yeah.
has the same sort of.
Yeah, he liked it. I mean, I don't think he loved it as much as I do, but he loves like Lord of the Rings, you know.
So he's a fantasy guy.
Not as much as I am. He really, you know what he loves is British crime mysteries.
Oh, the British do the crime mysteries very well.
Yeah, they really do. They really do.
Okay, so you're 11 or 12. You see the movie.
Yes.
You read the first book.
Yep.
Or what are the lessons or the insights? What effect is it having on an 11 or 12-year-old in
You know, I
Ohio?
think when I was growing up, my mom is the most avid reader. Like would have a book at a red light and we'd have to be like, the light is green. And she'd be like, okay. Like reads constantly. She would read us these like fantasy or like sci-fi stories when we were kids before bed. And there was this one, and I don't remember the name of it. I should ask her, but it's about this like dad and he takes his daughter and they go out to space to different planets and like they have little adventures. Very like Alice in Wonderland, but up instead of down. So my brain has always been, I think, wired for
The abstraction.
yeah, like fantasy and adventures and cool stuff. And then I grew up, I have 2 older brothers and all my cousins are boys. So we moved to this country. We're super poor and we're going to a private school because the Jewish community put us through school. So like I'm such an outcast at my school because, you know, again, kids are mean. We don't have any money. We go to a private school with a bunch of kids who have a lot of money.
Wait, why are you going to a private school?
Because we lived in a part of Cleveland that was not great. And so the community put us through private school for free.
Was it religious based?
It was a Jewish private school.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a missionary kid and I went to a Christian private school. Same thing, poor, donated clothes.
Yeah,
like
yes. All thrift store clothes.
Yeah,
and
terrible.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. I had one friend as a kid. We ended up moving to we moved to a different town at the end of 4th grade. So I went 5th grade on to this one public school and, you know, it got better. But as a kid, like those formative years, my brothers didn't want to play with me because they're, let's see, if I'm 5, they're 9 and 11.
And you're a girl.
And I'm a girl. And so they would be playing football in the front yard and they're like, you can't play with us. I'm like, okay. So I'd go off and like make up my own adventures in this like tree house that I made in the backyard. So I think truly seeing the first Harry Potter movie, because it's such a level of escape and like the end of the movie is so hopeful. He's like waving and there's the train and it's so the music, every single aspect of those movies is so perfect. The music is so perfect, and it like elicits this feeling of like hope and adventure. And I think I just connected to that part of it. And I was like, I have to read all these books. And it makes me like escape into like a different place.
So it was an escape.
Yes, I think so.
And are there any lessons in there that stick with you?
Sure. I mean, once I don't know which one, once the maybe fourth book comes out and it's really clear that it's a map for Nazis. Like there's the people who don't like anyone who's muggle born or like not magical born, and they're dirty, and there's like the whole map of Nazis and the Holocaust, and that's what they're trying to do. So I think the lessons of like truly good versus evil are so impactful. I love it.
When you're 11 or 12, like how do you see good versus evil? Like what is evil in your world at that age?
Well, I don't think at that age I realized that's what the stories were. I really do think the main takeaway is found family, like finding friends that are your little group of friends, because I really didn't have that much at that age, and just adventure and escape.
So would you role play that when you were a kid, the adventure part?
I don't think so. I think I really kept it separate in my head.
Like was it your secret thing, or was it something you would talk about with others?
Probably it was my thing. And the idea of leaving, like I always knew I wanted to leave our hometown. It's a really small town. So, at like 12, 13, by the time I was really starting to read the books, I'm like, I'm going to leave at some point. And
you just instinctively knew that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even an option.
It wasn't even an option. I just didn't see a future there. And not for any bad reasons. I was like, there's got to be something more. And here it is.
I relate to that. Like it was either LA or New York, one of the two.
From where?
Port Orchard, Washington, like population 3,000 or something.
Yeah, same with my town.
And just very close-minded. Like your options were kind of to work for the government, work in the shipyard, or be a policeman or a fireman or something.
And you're like, couldn't be me.
I remember my cousins years ago asked me, like, why didn't you ever, work at the shipyard or whatever? And I didn't know how to answer. It wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get out of there. I hated school.
Yeah, I really did too. And that I sort of regret, because now the idea of school is really exciting. I love homework.
I wish I could make friends with somebody who gets elected president and they put me in charge of the education system.
What would you change?
Everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects of the education system that is not working.
We're just doing it because we've always done it. We're
Right.
not doing it because it's effective. The kids aren't patriotic. They don't have high self-esteem. They're not ready for whatever it is they need to go do. And the thing that they're sold is, go in debt and with the college loan.
That part of it is tough.
And you don't even know what you want to do at that age.
Right.
If we're selling the American dream, it should be equal for kids. Like the one thing we could do is provide something for kids. And like, if I had kids, I don't know that I would, they'd have to go to private school. And I have the means to do that, but most people don't.
Yeah, my kid's going to public school. Well, he's not in school yet, but he will. But we live in Burbank. But I have thought about charter schools, or like, we'll see about magnet schools, I guess, maybe if he's...
Well, there's some big private Jewish schools around me.
Yeah,
you should see the line of 7 Series and Mercedes S classes.
See, I don't want them around
to drop
that, though.
their kids off.
Respectfully.
Like, I always have like a flashback to
right
kids
same.
making fun of they would drive me to school in a Volkswagen station wagon.
Yep.
It wasn't even a bug, a station wagon, and the floorboard was missing. It was a plywood.
Beautiful.
Like, just falling apart.
We had a green van. I think that's our first car. Maybe not. We would drive it to Vermont to like a lake in the summer to take the seats out in the front. And so we would just lay down. That's not safe. Shouldn't be doing that. but we did it. My parents were just chain smoking in the front. Me and my brothers were like laying down, coloring. Wild. All of that is unsafe.
Okay, so then the big question is, how did the Harry Potter books change your life?
When I really sat down to think about what books changed my life, I chose Harry Potter because I'm such a compulsive binge reader or watcher of movies, TV. And I think it's because of this series. It was the first time that I would I cannot sleep because I have to keep reading. I waited in line at midnight for book releases. Like I would bring, by the time the last book came out, I was, I think, out of high school. And I would bring the books to parties. And if the conversation got dull,
what kind of parties are these?
Like parties in basements, like with beer and beer pong and like.
So mom's doing it at the stoplight and you're doing it at a party?
I'm literally just like, oh, yeah. Just really quick.
What is that saying? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree?
1000%. I'm so my mom. It's crazy.
I gotta say, like, if I went to a party and there was a girl reading a book, I think that would be my girl. Like I would.
Right?
But most people probably would see that in a different way.
And now I married somebody.
It'd be so easy to walk up and go, "What are you reading?" Like,
right.
And if she gave me a little attitude because I interrupted her,
I would just sitting there smoking my Parliament lights, reading a book. Oh my God!
How terrible were we?
What a jerk! I know. Just with a natty light and a
don't you wish you could go
light.
back and just have a talk with yourself? Like,
I really wanted to sit myself down and be like,
"It's not
hey,
cute.
Nobody cares. No one cares about what you're doing." And like, everyone's so focused on themselves, and it's so not cute. Yeah, put it away. Lock it up.
So funny.
So ridiculous.
So the way that it changed your life is that you escaped into the story and it was the disassociation.
I think the disassociation and the amount what it did to me to make me a reader. I think it made me a reader. My absorption of these books has made me someone that like if I'm in a series or in a book, I can't stop. It's all I do in my free time. Like at the end of the night, we put our toddler down. My husband will be like, "Do you want to watch something?" I'm like, "I actually can't. Something crazy is happening in the middle of this book, and if I don't find out what it is now, I'll perish."
You know what's so funny? My fiance has this light.
Oh,
do you have one of those?
Yeah.
It cracks me up. So we go to bed, and that's when she reads, and she's got that little light on her book in the dark, and like I'll roll over.
That's just a
and
woman in STEM.
Oh,
she knows what she's doing.
Yeah, I don't really read in bed.
Oh, I read in bed.
I read in a chair.
I would love. I'm in like a reading group, and I want everybody has these giant chairs. They're huge, and they have a cup holder. Oh, I would live in it.
I highlight. I'm not, but I'm also not, I don't read fantasy that much. I'm reading more like
I read a lot of fantasy.
Psychology and stuff like that.
But I really do think I read everything. But I do like fantasy. I love a mystery. And fantasy has mystery aspects.
I would say that writing fantasy is probably the highest art.
It's just when it's good.
There's a lot of things that connect and
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like when you can really create a world and it's so detailed, I'm like, this is incredible. What a skill. I haven't read Lord of the Rings yet, actually, but I'm going to.
Okay, a little off the subject, but just curious. How did becoming a mother change you? Did you always want to be a mother?
It wasn't like a thing where I'm like, I have to have kids one day.
You were open to it.
But I just kind of assumed it was going to happen. Like, well, one day I'm going to have kids.
When you met your husband and you were dating, were you like, I want kids?
Yeah.
And he wanted kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have the kid, what happens in here? In the melon?
As a reader or in general?
No, in general. I mean, does it affect your reading?
I mean, it does because I want him to see that I am a reader.
What? Explain that.
Well, I saw my mom reading all the time, and here I am reading all the time.
What impression does that make on him that he sees you reading?
Well, I've read a lot of stuff about kids. Like if you're on your phone all the time, that's what they see is normal. And so when they get a phone, they're just going to be on their phone all the time. I mean, realistically, kids are going to be on their phone all the time anyway. But like, I want his norm to be going outside, reading a book. I want his norm to be like making up stories.
So it's purely setting an example.
Yeah, but if you make that habit for yourself, it becomes your life as well. So it's like...
becomes reality.
Yeah. So setting the example for him, like we read to him. He has so many books.
Back to how did you change when you had a kid? But aside from books, like what happens?
Well, let me tell you, I'm not a morning person, but I have to be now. I also don't drink very much anymore. I used to. I mean, not that I would like drink all the time, but I'm definitely a different person.
Just because you're busy?
Because you don't have an excuse in the morning. You don't get to sleep in. You don't get to take the day off from being a parent.
Can't call in sick.
You can't call in sick. You have to show up for your kid. You have to feed them. You have to wake them up. You got to get them dressed. And not just that, like I want my kid to know that I love him and I'm excited to see him, and whatever he has to say, I'm like really interested in it. And if he has questions, I want to be able to answer them. And I can't do that if I'm off. And I mean, yeah, there are days where I'm off, but I put on a face because I want him to, growing up with parents who, I mean, they did their very best. They worked so hard to build a life for my brothers and I, but they worked so hard, so they were never there. And also, you know, Russian stigma is like pretty cold.
A little more buttoned up.
A little bit. It's very just like, hey, are you crying? You should stop crying. And I don't want that for my kid. I want him to like express his emotions and feel whatever it is he's feeling, and he's allowed to feel what he's feeling. And we can talk through it.
What is his name?
Rowan.
Rowan?
Yeah.
And do you know...
this is a boy.
Boy. So yeah. 2 boys?
2 boys.
Will you keep going until you have a girl?
No, I think I'm done.
Two and out?
Two and out.
Okay, so the responsibility changes you. Is there anything else? Like, could you love any human more than your kid?
No.
Is it a different kind of love that you don't experience?
Yeah,
any other
it's
way?
very painful because you know that eventually they're going to go places without you, and that's so scary. Like the idea that anything could happen where he will experience things that I have no control over is so scary and anxiety inducing. And then, you know, there's like terrible things happening in schools all the time, which is so scary. But I think it's part of it.
Yeah, you can't wrap them in bubble wrap.
Right. You have to.
I mean, you can, but...
I think there's a quote in Finding Nemo, maybe. The dad says to Dory, I promised I would never let anything happen to him. And then she's like, well, that's a crazy thing to promise. If you never let anything happen to him, then nothing would ever happen to him. I'm like, oh, that's so deep.
Disney.
Right?
Disney.
My God.
What is his favorite book?
What's his favorite book? Lately, we've just been talking about animals he sees at the zoo instead of reading before bed, but he loves Little Blue Truck. It's a good book series.
What are you reading now?
Okay, I'm reading this book series, and I'm on book 9 of 9. And it's not great, but I'm a completionist. I have to finish this series or I will go insane. It's called Zodiac Academy, and it's kind of garbage. But somebody compared it to reality TV. They're like, this is like reality TV. This isn't going to be Hemingway. This isn't going to be, you know.
Junk food.
Yeah, it's junk food. And it is that. The story is fun, But there's so many parts of it that I'm like, this is the dumbest book I've ever read in my life.
What in your childhood made you a completionist?
I don't know. I think I have to know the endings. I have to know how things end.
I could care less.
I wish I could adopt that.
I feel no obligation for something I paid for to serve it. It serves me. If I'm a chapter or two into a book and I know it's not me, or they're just it's not good.
If I'm that early in, I'll put it down.
But you can tell.
Although I read this book that is truly so bad, and I had to finish it, and they just made it into a movie, and people love it, and it's the worst writing I've ever read in my life.
What is it?
It ends with us. The writing, it sounds like it was written by a middle schooler, not for middle schoolers, which is fair because middle schoolers also get to have books for them, but by a middle school girl. I'm like, this is terrible. Why do people love this? And I vowed to never read anything by that woman ever again. But I did just read something recently, right before I started this book series. What did I just read? I wish I had my Goodreads on me. Do you have Goodreads? Do you keep like a Goodreads log?
No, I don't even know what that is.
It's like an app and you just put in books you've read.
Oh.
But
and
it's
then other
nice
people
for keeping
see
track.
what you've read?
Yeah, it can be like a social media thing.
I don't know.
If you want
the
it.
Judgment of others.
That's fair. I'm probably being extremely judged for these garbage books that I've read.
Most people are in your camp with the completionist thing, and they're very like uptight about the structure and the rhythm of reading. And like, I got 5 books going right now, and I don't feel any obligation.
But you're smarter about it, though. I think that's the way.
They work for me.
We don't have time.
I'm trying to learn. I learn at a different pace.
Right.
I'm not looking to go back to school.
That's the thing. It's like, it's not school. You don't have to finish the book.
I mean, I need
to
reading and I love absorbing content, but it would ruin it for me if it felt like a job. I guess, you know what? I did art. Well, I paint and stuff. I got my art thing up to where I was in 7 galleries and like
that's cool.
and then it became a job and I hated it.
Oh yeah.
Because it was pressure. And then,
right.
And then you're really put to task by people's opinions on things. Like when they pay you to do a commission, you want them to love it, but people are complicated and they're a pain in the ass and all that. So I feel that sometimes with that sort of reading as a competition thing. Like, I'm not into it.
Yeah, it's just a competition with me. I'm in competition with myself.
Oh yeah, you seem like you're pretty driven.
I'm very competitive.
That's great. That's a great quality.
I grew up with 2 older brothers. I don't think I had a choice.
Yeah, you're a badass.
That's right. Yeah, and look,
have you thought of a name for this guy?
Yeah, we have a name.
What is it?
River.
Oh, what's the meaning behind that?
We just really liked it. And Rowan, our current son, is a type of tree, so we liked that it was like a tree and a river with like the nature aspects. I wanted to pick a Russian name so bad. And Russian boys' names are tough. And they're all very like Grigorovich, you know?
Yeah.
And the names I really do love are like my brother's names. And I can't pick one of my brother's names for my other son, you know? It feels mean, even though neither of them would care.
Kind of fun though.
But I know. But I'm like, I can't. I thought about Leo for Tolstoy.
What would be fun is if you picked it out of a hat. It was purely random. And then...
That's true.
You just played along like it wasn't.
Both of them said, like, if you want to pick his name, like, I won't care.
They don't mean
like,
it.
I know, but I can't. Because for forever, people will be like, oh, you named him after one of your brothers? You must not like the other one very much.
Yeah. Why should I read Harry Potter?
Look, Harry Potter has a lot of... I don't think it's a kid's book. I think maybe the first couple are, but they get pretty dark. And the world of it is so close to our own with just a twist, you know, the magical twist. That's really easy to put yourself in there, I think. And it's it's really nice to have a story where there's like a light at the end of a very dark tunnel, because it gets really dark and it gets very sad and bad things happen to this kid who's an orphan and, you know, grows up in pretty terrible, poor circumstances and then comes out the other side because of the help of other people and his friends. And I think that's a really lovely message.
And good conquers all.
And good conquers all.
It's great.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna give you my book. So I wrote this book. Now it's a little bit different of an experience.
It's not Harry Potter?
So it's a leadership book.
Great.
But I think I mean, I don't know that there's a more valuable leadership role than being a mom. Like I was raised by a single mom. So
Your mom
moms are pretty cool.
This is the heaviest book full of wisdom.
Maybe you need to start lifting weights.
Let me tell you something. I used to do CrossFit before I hurt my back.
It's 12 pounds or something.
This has got to be.
It's 2 books, actually.
Okay, well,
so
see?
It's, one book is I Am and the other book is Leader.
Uh-huh.
So it's, you know, it's about you and then it's about leadership.
This is very cool packaging.
It's more like an art book, kind of. It's the kind of book that you like take your time. Do not approach this book like the shitty ones you're reading right now. Like, take your time.
Listen, I need to clarify. They're not shitty because obviously I'm reading them, so they're fun. They're really fun. The world is very fun.
Well,
There's just aspects of it that I'm like
junk food.
Yeah,
but I mean
but it is junk food.
I'm not one to judge.
No.
There's people out there that don't like what I do, so it is what it is. Well, this was great. This was fun.
These are so beautiful.